A couple of weeks back, I made a video about Imp, our Kia Soul EV. It's my wife's car. It's got over 90,000 miles on the clock and the battery is basically good as new. I was super excited to share with you how well it was doing, and then yesterday I got a letter. It wasn't a great letter. So let's find out why it turns out I lied to you. So when you buy a used car, if you buy it from an individual, there's a chance you'll get a ton of history with it. You might get service records, you might get all sorts of bits and pieces about the car's life, and you can always talk to the owner about how they've treated the car, what they've done, how they've looked after it, and whether or not they tell you the truth is a question, but it does mean you might get a lot more information. We bought ours from a dealer, and all that came with it was the original service manual and the user manual and all that gubbins, and there were some stamps in the service record, and that was pretty much it. As I said in the last video, we plugged in a dongle to see if the car had a healthy battery, but unfortunately that day the dongle I had wouldn't work with the software I had, so we bought it based on a punt. We looked at the guessometer, we drove it around for a bit, and we decided that the guessometer was falling for about the right rate for the number of miles we'd done, so it was probably more or less accurate, and we decided that at that price we would take the chance. Really, my wife, her drive is only a few miles every day anyway, so even if it had a battery that was only half the capacity, it would still actually have met our needs. And then, as I say, a couple of weeks ago, in this video, I've got a new dongle. I plugged it in, I checked the state of the battery, and it said it was over 90%, it was nearly 95% state of health, which is amazing with 90,000 miles on the clock. One of the other things that I did just before we bought the car, along with checking whether it had ever been scrapped or rebuilt or written off, was to check whether it had any outstanding recalls. It's easy to do. You just tap the number of its VIN into a database and Bob's your uncle. It did have an outstanding recall. It had one for the brakes. Now, the Soul EV and I think various of the Souls have a slight software bug, which means that sometimes the parking pole won't engage when you put it into park. But both my wife and I always put the parking brake on, so it wasn't really a huge concern. And there was an outstanding recall. It was a software update. We took it to Kia just after we bought it, and they ran the software update. The car now, when you switch it off, automatically engages the parking brake. That's fine. What I didn't know, and only just found out, is that this car had another recall. It was one of the models where the SK Innovation pack in the car was replaced. So when I say it's got 90,000 miles on the clock, it's actually got 90,000 miles on the clock, but I don't know how many are on this pack, because the original pack was replaced with a pack called an E400. That E400 pack, well, like I said, I got a letter. Give me a sec. So this is a recall notice. It'll be pretty familiar to anyone who's owned a reasonably modern car, because modern cars quite often have recalls. Sometimes that's for minor things, sometimes it's for something bigger. In this case, it says important safety recall. We had one of these when we bought the car. It arrived shortly after we got the vehicle, and it told us what we already knew, that the car was subject to a recall and needed to go back and have the software updated. This one kind of says the same thing, but it's a little bit more concerning. So this will be an experience that's familiar to anyone who bought the original Hyundai Kona EV and the Bolt EV. It says that an electrical short can occur within the high voltage battery pack assembly case located under your vehicle. If an electrical short occurs, a fire may result while driving, thereby increasing the risk of injury. Now, This is recall notice in the US. It's 23V-218. That's the NHTSA number, or manufacturer recall SC267. But I know from reporting that this has been a recall that's happening worldwide. The E400 pack that replaced the original pack, turns out, has a problem with moisture ingress. Right now, not a problem, but I do live in the Pacific Northwest, and I will say, it does sometimes rain here. You barely notice. It's only 364 days of the year. Anyway, so unfortunately, at the moment, what it says is that an electrical short can occur between the anode and cathode of the battery cells, and you may get the fire, and then that is related to excessive precipitate within the battery. The identifications that you might see at the moment before the software update that they're planning to do are an incomplete high voltage battery charging, loss or fluctuating vehicle range, and illumination of the EV warning light. Component manufacturer is SK On, which is the name for what was SK Innovation. Of the 2,689 vehicles that sold, they estimate that around 1%, so about 26 cars, might have this defect, which is not a high number. Unfortunately, when this recall came out, Nikki actually told me about it before I'd even seen it and said, you should check. And I checked, I put in the VIN, and my car did not come up. And that's probably because when the car was originally sold, it didn't have the later version of the E400 pack. What this tells me is that that pack that I thought had 90,000 miles on it almost certainly does not. I don't know when it was replaced. I can ask Kia and see if they'll provide that information, but I don't want to mislead you with saying my pack's super great and it's got 90,000 miles on it when it might only have 40 or 50,000 miles. The other thing is, and this will also be familiar to Hyundai Kona EV owners and Bolt EV owners, Kia do not have a fix. Right now, it says that the plan is to put some software in the vehicle which will monitor the state of the battery, and it will look for those voltage fluctuations that might suggest that the car is becoming unwell, that the battery pack is developing a fault, and at that point, the vehicle will reportedly enter a limp mode and allow you to get home, but then should be taken immediately to a dealer. That isn't ready yet. At the moment, Kia haven't given us anything that we can do to make sure that the battery doesn't get this problem showing up. I mean, realistically, that would be just driving it in the sun, which isn't going to happen, although thankfully, for me at least, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It is our summer here. We're entering the fire season. And so the chances are that it's not going to get rained on an enormous amount. But if that does happen, if it puts on the EV warning light, the interim advice is if it has an abnormal battery cell voltage condition, you may experience incomplete high voltage battery charging, loss of range, or illumination of the EV warning light, which is what is in the notice. And then it says if that occurs, please contact Kia Roadside Assistance or online to have your vehicle towed to the nearest Kia dealer. So yeah, that is not the best news. It may be that we end up with a new battery pack anyway, because it may be that that's what has to be replaced. Once the new software goes in, it runs its diagnostics and it tells you if the pack is sickly. It may be not. It doesn't say anything about extending the warranty on the existing pack. So obviously if it were faulty, I think they would replace it in the next 10,000 miles, but I don't know whether they'll extend it longer. The real question at this moment is, how will Kia handle this? Will they make the same pig's ear of it that we've seen from Hyundai with their Kona EV battery replacement and Chevrolet with their Bolt EV battery replacement? Both companies seem to have landed in a fairly good place at the end, although I'm still hearing from people in Europe who have trouble getting battery replacements. I'm still hearing from Bolt owners who are finding that it's taking a long time to get their battery replaced. But that is one option. Maybe we'll go down that path and reach replacement nice and quickly, or will we end up in a place that we've seen before with a complete lack of information and owners left in the dark? So I will keep you updated. I really hope Imp doesn't need a new pack and actually it turns out that everything is fine. But if she does, we'll follow that through and let you know. Oh, hey, I'm outside and I don't have the teleprompter. I'd say that's it for today, but I'm going to have to do something about that. Give me just 1 sec. Fortunately, I planned ahead and brought a computer with me, so on that note, we are done with today's video. If you have a comment, drop us a polite note in the Discord chat room, on Mastodon, or if you're a Patreon supporter, in the comments there. If you want more, subscribe, hit the bell, and follow the links below to regularly support us with a YouTube membership or Patreon subscription. You'll also find links to our Ko-fi, Bitcoin and Swag store, as well as that aforementioned Mastodon server. Scrolling by on my right, which would be over there, is the list of amazing charged up supporters, and shoutouts go to our V2G Patreon supporters, Pedro Muro Pinheiro, Alan Tupper, Andrew Martin, Bennett Elder, Brophy Wolf, Chris Maxwell, Cyprian Laplace, Dan Blair, Gordon C. Hay, Esker John Trammell, Kyle Fox, Mark Eggleton, Peter Dillinger, Regine Fellows, Sean Tucker, Stefan Fremgen, Stephen Williams, Tesla in the Gong, Paul Bricknell, Tony Moss, Kyle Hodgson, Chris Ascenter, Denny Hyde, Lance Charles, Linda Irish, Mike Weeder, and Paul Nelson. And finally, big thanks to our off-grid supporters, Paul Conway, Kevin Burrowbridge, Stephen O'Donoghue, Jim Burness, Robert Flannery, Aaron Han, Ellery Hensley, Rory Litwin, JP Fagerback, Dave Kitchen, Andrew Glenn, Anonymous Freak, Chris and Michael Johnson, Clay Witt, CPU Freak 101, Eric Knack, Joe Bresney, Joe Hughes, John Henderson, Laura Reynolds, Marcel Ward, Matthew Drobnak, Nigel S, Reggie Watts, Will Graylan, and of course Ian. Don't forget we make videos every Monday, Wednesday and Friday and Saturday on the main channel, plus Sunday on Take 2. And with that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you soon, and as always, keep evolving. And if you're wondering about my lovely Z88, because I've been trying to find an excuse to use this in a video for a while, it's thanks to Tom Steepleton, who is a lovely guy who helped me when I was in England. I've always wanted a Z88. I was looking for one. I kept looking at eBay auctions where they sell for far too much money for what they are. And yeah, while I was there, I said, any chance anyone on Mastodon knows of a Z88 for sale on this route home? So on my route home, I managed to buy this, which I'm super excited by. Thank you to that nice person who went round the cameras. And I got it home and it worked. The guy sold it to me and said, I don't know if it works, I don't have any batteries for it, so I brought it home. It works perfectly. A Z88 is a Z80 based computer which runs BBC Basic. It has this little LCD screen. I don't know whether you'll see it in the light. And it manages about 20 hours of work time off 4 AA batteries, which is frankly astonishing. It has a little word processor in it, has a, well, actually it has a sort of DTP package in it. It's really quite weird. And a serial port. And it's taken me this long to get to the point where I could actually transfer data onto and off it with any degree of success. I also upgraded it, so it's got 512K of RAM instead of the 128. I can't remember how many K of RAM it had when I got it. It wasn't very much. It's got 512K of RAM and it's got 512K of battery-backed storage. Yeah, it's very neat. Love it. Thank you so much, Tom.